The most amazing wildlife experience that I've had ever happened at this picnic bench with me checking my smartphone. I'd given up. I'd been here having a walk around the woods looking for a certain bird and it never showed up. So I came back here, checked my emails and was about to head home when from the tree over there dropped a bird, literally just dropped out the tree and walked over to me. But actually I'm telling a lie. The story started 2 years earlier when one of those things that happens to people interested in wildlife, a friend called to say that one of his friends had a rare bird in the garden. The story was that they had a Capercaillie in their garden. Now, I was sceptical. I was expecting to see or hear that it was basically a pheasant. There's these strange Montana blue pheasants which get released in the countryside, and I thought it was probably one of them. And my friend said, I've got a picture, I've got an email, I'll send it over to you. So he sent it over, and this is the photo, followed by this one. A female Capercaillie sitting in the living room whilst the family was watching TV. Now unfortunately, the story was that this bird turned up in May and this was now June. So I waited for 11 months and went to have a look. And unfortunately I was unsuccessful. The bird didn't show up that year, hasn't shown up since. But I then heard about a bird here at Brechin that was following school children around and hanging out with people. Only again for 2 weeks of the year. So I decided to come and have a look and walked around the forest. The first year did it many times with no luck. The second year I came back, walked around, and although I'd had people telling me that they'd seen it 5 minutes ago, I never did until, as I say, one day I'd given up and I was sat just here when out of that tree came one of the most beautiful birds I've ever seen. Subtle, but still stunning. And she provided me with a bit of a problem because I had my usual gear. At that time it was a 7D with a 100-400 lens. And being a photographer, what I want to do is to get as low as possible so that I can get that nice background, as good a shot sort of at the bird's eye level. So I did this. And she walked over and sat here. So she sat within a metre of me. Well, actually no, she sat practically touching me. So I thought, right, back up. So I backed up to get the minimum focal distance on this is 1.8 metres. I backed up 2 metres to get the photo. She got up, she walked over and she sat in front of me again. So I backed up, she walked over, I backed up, she walked over. And it must have looked like a very strange sort of escape as this photographer crawled away from this female Capercaillie. Now, I did eventually, probably a bit embarrassingly slowly, realise that this was a great opportunity. So this lens was swapped for my 24-105 and started taking some photos wide angle, including the background. The sort of thing that you dream of taking, but it took me a while to realise I had the opportunity here. And these are some of the images I got. So having spent quite a bit of time with this beautiful Capercaillie, I had to leave. For that weekend I decided that I wanted to come back and have another look. So I brought my wife, a couple of friends who were visiting, and my young son along, because I thought this may well be the last chance he gets to see anything like this, because it's such an amazing sight. We came to the car park and was told that the Capercaillie was spending time somewhere else. So I'm going to go and find that spot. It's changed quite a bit. Last time I was here it was a lot more open than this, and there was an archaeological dig taking place that used to happen each year in May, and just behind me where this tree stump is there are a couple of archaeologists, and I went over to them and said, "Excuse me, have you seen her?" And at that point they interrupted me and said, "She's here." And the Capercaillie was sat in between them. She used to spend a lot of time here with the archaeologists, just hanging out through the day. She regularly would sit at the worst place, so she'd sit on the tool that was needed. She would seem to sort of beg attention from them. And I mean, this photo here, this is a perfectly wild Capercaillie, one of the rarest, most elusive birds in Britain. A bird that you're very lucky to ever see even in good Capercaillie habitat. And she's been stroked by an archaeologist while sat on a hammer. This isn't normal. Amazing, but not normal. My son also got to stroke her. She was sat just next to him. In fact, I believe, if the midges don't kill me, he was actually sat on that tree trunk there while the Capercaillie was sat at his feet. So again, this is the site. My understanding is this was a small community of people who'd been displaced from the land who had come up here to try and eke out a living. And when I was here last, this was an area of clear felled ground which has grown up quite remarkably. There's now a nice bit of habitat. I've got gold crests all around, so I might even get to take some photos of wildlife. But yeah, this is quite an amazing site. Quite amazing the changes that can happen in a few years, as you can see between this and the photos. Well, I'm going to continue up the hill. Well, they say a photo is the equivalent of 1,000 words, and being somebody who's a bit dyslexic, I think that's pretty good odds. So I've just been stood taking a photo of some of these lone trees that have been left to rot, left for wildlife. And the one I've just been photographing is absolutely covered in woodpecker holes. In the last 5 minutes I've seen green woodpecker, great spotted woodpecker and sparrowhawk all in this little patch. It's looking really good. If you can see behind me, that's where I'm heading, if the midges don't eat me first. So nearly at the top now. And this really does show that this used to be a fort. Never been here before. I think I'll come back. So I'm now at the top of Benahee. Well, actually it's not the proper top's over there, but this is the famous one. This is what I think is called the Mither Tap, and it's somewhere that can be seen all over Aberdeenshire. It's one of the great local landmarks. The reason I'm up here is basically for the view, because around me there's just this massive sort of pockets of land use, pockets of woodland, pockets of farmland, these sort of really special places. And also in the forest here used to be this female Capercaillie, the friendly one. And the reason she was here is really quite sad, because in this whole view that I'm looking at now, she was probably the last Capercaillie. And she'd almost certainly never seen, or not since she was a chick, never seen another Capercaillie, certainly never a male. So when she was in the car park, she basically thought I was a male Capper. So it was that time of the year and she was looking to find a male. There was this big creature walking around in the woods making lots of noise. I mean, that's a male Capercaillie displaying. What's even more strange is the behaviour around the archaeologists, because she just seemed to like to hang out with them. She'd sit next to them and be stroked like a pet dog. She'd sit on the equipment to sort of get attention. She'd just hang about. And it makes me wonder whether for that couple of weeks of the year during the breeding seasons, whether the females just hang out and spend time just in each other's company. You know, the rest of the time they're out in the forests mainly on their own. So for that 2 weeks a year, they would spend their time together. But it's a sad thought, and that she is probably the last one here, the last one within my sight, and I can see a lot of Aberdeenshire from here. And also, I thought I'd fill you in on the end of the story. I'd wondered if something could be done. I wondered whether we could get, shall we say, a sample from one of the male Capercaillies at the Highland Wildlife Park. However, a different decision was taken. So I say she was the last one here, and she probably was. But she's now been moved, so hopefully she will discover what a real male Capercaillie looks like, and maybe have some chicks of her own. But yeah, it's one of those stories that I think needs telling, so that people can see, you know, what's happening. We're in a fantastic place and it looks great, but the fact that we've lost this fantastic bird from the area is a real shame to me, and it's something that I think we should be trying to do something about eventually, you know, trying to connect up these pockets of woodland so that there's a big enough habitat for there to be a sustainable population. As a photographer, probably the highlight so far is taking pictures of her. I will be doing a second, well actually I'll be doing a third video, which I'll actually go through a bit more of the technical side and the workflow in Lightroom. So that's coming up at some point soon. But yeah, magical place, and I'm going to start heading back down to the car park. So I'm back down in the forest. It's got really quite busy up at the top. And one of the things I've always said about my photography is that 90% of it is about telling stories. And I was thinking about this, and I thought I'd probably give you the real story as to why George does what he does and this female was doing what she did. You see, the creatures of the forest all got together and had a meeting and decided something had to be done. And an old owl came up with a plan. He told the magnificent male Capercaillie to go and fight, to be stunning, to show off, to show his power, and to wow the people. And so he did. He went, he attacked Land Rovers, he attacked photographers, he even attacked David Attenborough. But the female said, "What can I do?" And the owl said, "You know what? Go and make friends. Go and hang around with them. Make some of them even fall a little bit in love with you." And so she did. And I have to say, it worked. It was magical time I spent photographing that female Capercaillie. However, since she's been moved, she doesn't write, she doesn't call, she hasn't contacted me on Facebook. But I still think she was amazing. So next time, I promise to actually include taking some photos. Thank you.